Hello, and welcome to Bossing English with Mr. F. We're going to try and do a quicker video on Ibsen Rossetti because whilst I would recommend you watch the 40-minute behemoth, the cosmic abomination that is the last video I released, maybe something a bit more bite-sized and more easily digestible would be useful for you if you're tight on time before the exam. So we'll look at this 2017 question. Hidden truths will always be revealed in the end. In the light of this view, consider ways in which writers explore truth and secrecy. And if you'll remember, we said how to answer these questions, look at Ibsen and Rossetti's life and times, because what was going on when these works were written is just as important in the eyes of OCR in the light of this statement. So this statement is a possible interpretation of them. So you're going to view the life and times and works of Ibsen and Rossetti through the lens of this idea. And if we're struggling with that, we can turn it into a yes-no question. Are hidden truths always revealed in Ibsen and Rossetti? Or we might focus on the other bit. What aspects of truth and secrecy do they explore in their work? Yes, no, sometimes, or a mixture of both. Well, when I looked at this question, what I felt was that for Ibsen, it was a yes, because the whole dramatic modus operandi of this play relies on the fact that there's a big revelation at the end and the burden of the secret of Nora all the way through it. So for me, with Doll's House, absolutely yes. However, I did feel that sometimes revelations were gender-based, and I'll explain a bit more about that later. With Rossetti, I felt that this was rarely the case because ultimate hidden truths to do with faith and God are not revealed for a reason. That's the whole point of faith. The faith is tested with that withholding of, revealed evidence. So it's an article of faith that you believe in spite of the lack of evidence. And Rossetti documents the difficulties of this agape, this sacred love. There is scope also to look at the profane love and, the playful nature of Rossetti's work, where she teases us with ambiguities, such as in Remember, or more obviously Winter, My Secret. Okay, let's start. Nora's secret, the crime of forgery, is exposed and has terrible but liberating consequences for at least one of its protagonists. That's Nora, isn't it? The hidden truth of their marriage as being unequal, that its happiness is a sham. Nora says, we've never exchanged a serious word on a serious subject. This is when they finally sit down, or she, taking the upper hand here, tells them to sit down and that they're going to have a serious conversation. Interesting use of the word serious there. Thorvald's selfishness is revealed when in Act 3 he craves a crisis but immediately fails it. He says he wants to do something whereby, I wish, your life would be at risk and I could offer my life, my blood, everything for you. And it's at this moment that Nora finds the confidence to allow the letter to be read, tears herself loose and says in a clear, firm voice, very useful stage direction there, read your letters now, Thorvald. This is another challenge or opportunity for him to prove he is the loving husband he claims to be, and he fails it. When he finds out, he reacts violently. Wretched woman, a hypocrite, a liar, so all these epithets, these bad language, a criminal, the hideousness of it, shame on you, shame, no religion, no morals, no sense of duty. Now you have destroyed all my happiness, you have ruined my whole future. And here, the possessive pronoun my tells us something about how he sees their marriage as she's in a supporting role, and it's all about him, and also about his status anxiety as a middle-class man in Norwegian society. He's absolutely paranoid about losing the reputation he believes he's worked so hard to gain and position in society. And when the second letter comes, rescinding that first letter, his reaction instinctively is, I am saved. So that narcissism is just there beneath the surface. Nora, I am saved. And Nora says 3 words, what about me? Oh, you too, of course, we're both saved. and then he starts to wax lyrical about how he has forgiven her and how she should feel because he has forgiven her with her feminine helplessness. So again, very revealing of his selfishness. But at the same time with this play, bigger truths are revealed about society. So we have a quote here from the Social Democraten, a newspaper in Copenhagen. The play was first performed on the 21st of December, 1879, and this was published on the 23rd of December. I'll link to it. There are thousands of such dolls' homes where the husband treats his wife as a child he amuses himself with. So the deeper social hidden truth is revealed, whereby the audience, and that's where the scandal and the shock of this play comes from, is that it's holding up a mirror to the grotesque inequality in the domestic sphere of those people sitting in the audience watching it. And then we can tie that to, I talked about AO3 being the life and times property law and changes to property law. The Married Women's Property Act of 1888 in Norway. This happened a bit earlier in the UK in 1882. But these were probably precipitated by the debate that was happening around things like A Doll's House and the conversations following its scandalous arrival on the stage. There is a bit more information about that I will link to. For the Women's Property Acts of the UK, changes allowed married women to own and control property in their own right. And more interestingly here is for Norway, I'll link to this academic paper, but you only need to kind of skim the beginning bit, where we see Ibsen as a co-signee of a letter in 1884 wanting the rights, property rights of women to change, of married women to change, but wanting to go even further. So there you can see his name. Their position was a radical one. They spoke in favour of separate property and income rights as the normal order of marriage. That didn't happen with the passing of the Married Women's Property Act in 1888, but it was an important milestone in the history of women's citizenship. Although the most radical ideas were rejected, the fact is that married women now became economic subjects. They were granted disposal of their income and the right to make contracts in economic matters. So there you can see a clear link between the work and the times. I'll also link to this, which is the full review from the Social Democraten in Copenhagen. Okay, Rank's illness is hidden. This is a congenital spinal tuberculosis, a social stigma, links to the play's ideas about naturalism, where things are inherited. You might remember earlier in the play that Nora's spendthriftness or spendthrift behavior is linked to the father. It's in your blood. Yes, these things are hereditary, Norma. And here again with Rank, his illness is supposed to come from his father's lascivious lifestyle. He slept around and he drank and ate very rich food and drank too much. Interestingly, Torvald approves of his solitary animal-like death, where he withdraws from society, and that's probably because of the scandal he believes is attached to it, where he says it's probably better this way. He's going to slink away and hide like a wounded beast. Well, perhaps it's best this way for him anyway. So I thought that was quite interesting. And again, maybe that you can tie that to Torvald's social status, what we would call today status anxiety. And interestingly, he says something similar with the revelation that Nora wants to leave him. Have you thought what people will say? So Rank's illness remains hidden. A key dramatic device hanging over Nora and the play is the locked letter in the box. It's visible yet unreachable and symbolic of the patriarchal powers in the domestic space, which were typical of the era. Christine is an interesting one because she fosters this revelation. She thinks Helmer must know the truth. I'm quoting now. The unhappy secret of Nora's must be revealed. They must come to a full understanding. Christine has a good understanding of what an unhappy marriage is. She's been through that. She's also a traditional woman, and she wants to serve someone to work for, to live for, a home to bring joy into. It's on the same page if you've got the Bloomsbury Student Edition, page 84. But you could maybe tie that, if you were thinking about sisterhood, to the Goblin Market and the truths that are maybe revealed there about the relationship between sisters. I think that's quite interesting that she helps that awful truth come out. Male secrets are sometimes kept by women. Norma is entrusted with secrets. Rank's illness, with the black X on the name card, she's the one who explains what it means to Torvald, who has to be protected from ugly truths like his death, or maybe the true nature of his illness. And also their flirting remains a secret. So Rank is one of the few people who treats her as an adult. I've put Torvald, I knew, of course, this is the one, the Juliet Stevenson version, where he says that, and it seems to be like he has to, again, seeking to be on equal or superior terms to his wife there, that there's nothing she knows that he doesn't already know. Recommend the Juliet Stevenson version of 1992 because we get the full character arc of Nora going from a performative doll, where she plays the role that's been assigned to her by the husband, to finding the strength at the end and taking control and dominating her husband with the revelations that come out at the end. And I would also recommend the Nora short film from 2013, where we see that maybe 21st century women have their own dolls' houses or cages, societal cages, certainly in relationships where the husband is away and she's left going for a job interview and trying to manage her career and being left with the kids to manage. There's no maid at this time. So being left with the kids and the housework and the sense that it's a new form of entrapment for women, even though we're a long way in the future. With Rossetti, we talked about the hidden truths having to be concealed as an act of faith. In Shut Out, we have that the door is shut, the caesura of the full stop straight away, quite brutal, bringing everything to a halt. The shadowless spirit and ambiguity, who refuses to answer to the request of the speaker, the fact that she feels outcast and is limited to terrestrial pleasures, and these kind of paradisal pleasures seem to be out of reach. A good link there would be then maybe to Uphill, which suggests that the uphill struggle of faith and belief will be rewarded later. We get that catechism of question and answer that reflects the Tractarian faith, or the High Anglican service of order in the church. And you could explore that, the doubt which comes with the questions, and even the answers maybe are unsatisfying, or you could explore that if you feel like the truth is still concealed, it's not fully revealed. Good Friday is a good one, with its rhetorical questions which are inevitably unanswered. Am I a stone not to be able to weep at the foot of cross like other people? Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of Christ. But what's interesting about all of these poems, Shut Out, Uphill, and Good Friday, are that there are hidden truths which are biblical references that her devout readers should be able to, it should be revealed to them. So she has this way of encoding scripture and verse. So, for example, the stone that's referenced at the start and end of Good Friday is a reference to Moses smiting the rock in the desert to bring water for the Israelites. So that's Exodus 17. You have the repentant thief on the cross next to Jesus. That's Luke chapter 23, verses 39 to 42, if I'm not mistaken. And the name Peter would also resonate. So these resonances and encoded biblical references are there to be revealed to the more devout readers. So you could explore that. Secrecy is Rossetti's friend in some ways. We never find out who John is in No Thank You, John. Winter, My Secret is a very playful poem in which ambiguity is played around with in verse. And Rian Williams has said that a lot of Rossetti's work focuses around secrets and mysteries to be revealed. Of course, there are the ultimate mystery of the Lord's work that we hope will be revealed maybe in death, maybe with Remember. We could talk about soul sleep and this interesting philosophical idea or theological idea that's at play there. Speaking of Rossetti's tendency to encode hidden truths into her poetry from the Bible, we might think that this came from her environment, which was surrounded by the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. We know that Dante Gabriel Rossetti, who illustrated some of her works like Dublin Market, also the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood also had a tendency to encode their works with literary symbols and references. And here's a very good example from William Holman Hunt, The Awakening Conscience of 1853. So have a look at the picture on the left. And you will see there's a cat under the table. You will see a glove on the floor. You will see these kind of threads from this embroidery that hasn't been finished. And all of that can be unpacked by a thoughtful reader because it has symbolic meaning. And I'll dig that out from you from the Tate website, where an art historian has done that for us. So if we want to quote this very kind art historian, it's Terry Riggs, wrote this in March 1998. Interestingly, this painting was itself inspired by a biblical verse from Proverbs: as he that taketh away a garment in cold weather, so is he that singeth songs to an heavy heart. Okay, so we're going to look at his reading of this. Rising from her lover's lap, she gazes into the sunlit garden beyond, which is reflected in the mirror behind her. The mirror image represents the woman's lost innocence, but redemption, indicated by the ray of light in the foreground, is still possible. Intended to be read, the painting is full of such symbolic elements. The cat toying with the broken-winged bird under the table symbolizes the woman's plight. A man's discarded glove warns that the likely fate of a cast-off mistress was prostitution. A tangled skein of yarn on the floor symbolizes the web in which the girl is entrapped. Indeed, the famous art critic John Ruskin wrote to the Times on the 25th of May 1854, "The very hem of the poor girl's dress, at which the painter has laboured so closely, thread by thread, has story in it, if we think how soon its pure whiteness may be soiled with dust and rain, her outcast feet failing in the street." So we might be inclined to link this either to the encoding of biblical references and symbols in the devotional poems, or to those poems more profane that deal with the difficulties of women's position in society, such as Sir Louise or Maud Clare, or From the Antique. Right, there we are. You know what to do. Likey like, subby sub, and I will be back with more Felicity and on, probably for the GCSE Gs out there. There we are. Bye for now.